Yeah, 1 second.
So that's you don't have to go over lines either.
Okay, Chair Schwartz.
Present.
Vice Chair Evers.
Present.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Present.
Commissioner Wingard.
Present.
And Commissioner Scott. Present. And Commissioner Brystat.
Oh, he's not online, is he? If he arrives, we'll note it. All right, we'll go ahead and approve the agenda this evening. Is there a motion?
Motion to
You, William, is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any ads, change? All right, we'll go ahead and vote, go to vote, approve the agenda, please. And it passes.
Oh, yeah, where did it? Where is there? Oh, there it is. Does it work? Does yours work?
Oh, got a malfunction on too.
Well, no, none of them are working. No,
Oh,
put it back.
well, wait. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Oh, yeah, you got
Okay,
it.
there we go.
You're gonna have to say. Oh, dear. Somebody has the silliest tonight. The next agenda item is audience business. I do not see anyone, or anyone online. So we'll go ahead and move to the next agenda item, the public hearing related to resolution 2025-21. The rezoning of 4651 and 4652 highway. Report, please.
Staff is and the applicant are requesting a continuance of this item. We'll just have primarily staff has more details to work through, so we're requesting a continuance with the applicant's blessing. However, I just wanted to talk through dates with you. So the applicant is not available at your next regular meeting on November 10th. They do have availability on the 11th or the 13th if PCDC is interested in that. If not, we can just go to the following meeting, which would be, well, this is why we were looking at that intervening meeting, because we're assuming you all are not going to want to meet on November 24th, the week of Thanksgiving. However, if you are inclined to meet that night, we're happy to have that, and you will be recused from that item as you'll be hearing it as the board member. So I just wanted you to all check with calendars to see what worked for you.
What was some more time the option?
Yeah, so the options would be November 11th, which is a Tuesday night, that's Veterans Day, but it's not a town holiday, or Thursday, November 13th. Or the next regular meeting, should PCDC want to have it, on November 24th.
I can also, I'm around here Thanksgiving week, so it's not a bad thing either. Were you here? Yeah.
I am also.
All of those dates work?
The 13th is, did you say the 11th or 13th?
I can only do the 24th.
Let's do the 24th.
Well, then
Does
that
that,
okay.
does that?
And that works for them?
We will continue it to that date, and if we need to pivot, we will renotice it and do it a different way.
Okay.
So, November 24th. So, someone will need to make a motion to continue resolution 2025-21.
Motion to continue resolution 2025-21 to the November 24th meeting.
Thank you. Is there
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. We'll go to vote.
Great. Thank you very much for
Okay.
that. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Next agenda item is our consent agenda. We had minutes from September 22nd. Thank you, Maria, for doing this so thoroughly.
I looked these over. I will motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Anything we missed? Okay, we'll go ahead and go to vote to approve the September minutes. Nice, thank you. And, general business, staff report. Shall we adjourn to the?
Yeah, we can adjourn to the workshop.
I'll motion to adjourn to the workshop. There a second?
Let's look at that.
All in favor? All right. Gosh, that is.
1/10 of an hour. Very doable.
6 minutes.
It's on time.
Says you can't be efficient in government, but that's right.
Man, no, I can survive.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye. Have a
Thank you,
good
Maria.
It's getting cold out there.
We're gonna get a little freezy for you.
I know. So tonight we're here to give you all an update on the wildfire resiliency code that is recently adopted at the state level, as well as some conversations happening locally with the board. So as you all know, wildfire risk continues to increase and affect our built environment. We've seen this locally here with a few fires recently. 2023, the Colorado State Legislature established the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board to evaluate and create a statewide code along with a map for where it would apply. At the same time, the town of Lyons established a wildfire mitigation committee to kind of monitor the work at the state level and consider recommendations locally for our own codes and efforts. And that committee has since disbanded earlier. Well, I believe it was in September, now that the state code is in effect, and they've directed staff to adopt the state code. So I want to give you an up on that. But also they'd like to have some community-wide conversations about some other mitigation activities that we'll talk about. So first, just kind of wanted to go through what is the Wildfire Resiliency Code. So it's a comprehensive set of codes. The goal is to enhance life safety and property protection in areas for what we call the wildland urban interface, or your WUI, however you would say that was it. So it's based on the Colorado State Forest wildfire risk intensity map, but it's been modified for the purposes of this code, but it includes multiple factors: vegetative fuels, topography, weather patterns, fire behavior modeling, etc. It does have kind of a tiered approach. Good portions of the metro areas do not have an applicability. And then after that, they have 3 different classifications. The lowest, I don't know why they did this. They have 3 different map classifications, but 2 different code classifications. So, I think that was just work kind of handled a little bit in isolation. I'm not sure. But either way, the low intensity is class 1. Moderate intensity and high intensity are both class 2, and Lyons is in the moderate intensity. In the packet is a link to the interactive map, which I think is really interesting to look through, but this is just a snip of kind of the area around us. This is predominantly the orange, which is the moderate risk. You can see one little area of yellow, kind of on the far right side of the screen. And then the red is the high risk and high intensity areas. And the reason for the hatch is that's federally owned land. So it still has the same intensity. They're just showing it differently because it's not privately owned or not owned. So those were kind of federal lands. So this reflects the map. It reflects kind of how they, aggregated the zones with this kind of hexagonal. I don't know, there's a whole methodology. If you're interested in GIS, then they have a methodology on how they kind of created this. But either way, for Lyons, it's relatively simple in that the entirety of our community is mapped with the same intensity. So I think a number of other communities are having a lot more discussion about the map and how to apply those border areas on a specific property. So, and the code does include a pathway to modify the map locally, but we have not. I don't believe our board is interested in looking at that right now. Go ahead.
Real quick,
Yeah.
So I know this is not the town lines, but that's Lyons Valley Estate, Alliance Park Estate, down
The road right there.
Highway 7 right there. So that was the area where it got evacuated twice during the Cottonwood fire. Okay. So I guess the town of Lyons is not obligated, but that'd be Boulder County, and I know in their escape route would, well, part of it would either be up Highway 7 or down west or east. probably east. No, I'm,
That's why
The
we,
transportation planner in you is coming out.
yeah, I nerd that way, I think that way, yeah, no, I'm, okay, I'm just,
they, they didn't have a place to run away bravely during those fires, and that's why so we had real issues with that. Cause we were all, I remember trying to bail east, cause we were gonna bail to Estes. Sheriff said, no, you can't. Yeah, that's why that's a tricky area. Right there.
yeah, and I guess. So that becomes under Boulder County's responsibility to try and do the same thing, they have to adopt the same code, I guess this is where I'm going, I've got to put this all together.
Yeah, so Boulder
Um,
County, for a number of years, they have a long history of regulating a WUI code, and
Yeah.
so I don't know personally how the state adopted code matches or aligns with their, maybe you know, their own code, but, again, you can, I think, adopt your own code if it's more intense or mitigates to a higher degree than the state code. Go ahead.
I practiced in Boulder County.
Yeah,
The, what do you call it, class 2, I guess, or
Mhm.
zone 2. It's pretty restricted. I think it's more restrictive than what I'm reading in the state code.
okay.
So I think the county's got a bit of an advance, and they're not following the outline of the orange to the red.
No, they just kind of have a
Yeah.
east line and a west line, if I
Yeah.
understand it.
And then, I mean, and then let's say like Lions Park, is it Lions Park Estates? Is that what it's called?
This neighborhood up here?
Yeah, I forget,
Is that-
yeah,
Okay.
Lions, I get the name right, I always get it, but, so, I mean, I guess we're kind of right on the edge, right at the edge of the foothills, so, I mean, I don't know, I'm trying.
I'm gonna get too hung up on the red versus the orange, because the code doesn't differentiate.
Okay, that's
I think we're
true,
trying to
yeah,
give some communities, like, if you're in the red, you should like really strongly consider this, and if you're in the orange, you should just consider it. I think that's kind of the intent.
okay, yeah, but you're right about that, it doesn't.
There's no difference.
Yeah,
No, there's no difference in how the code applies. The red and the orange are the same. The code doesn't directly address kind of, new neighborhood and require evacuation routes and things like that, although, we are going through our CWPP and evacuation routes are, certainly a priority. This code really regulates kind of development on existing properties or new development. Anything you want to add on that from your perspective?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd say is not from the board's perspective, but from the fire districts. So if one of the things that we're thinking through is who might cooperate to enforce whatever code is adopted. They have a real interest in Lions Park Estates and Blue Mountain and some areas that are red and that are in the district, even if they are not in the town.
Great. Yeah, we have a big district.
So legislation gives kind of multiple entities authority or the ability to regulate the code. So local governments can, and then fire districts can. And so because of this, we have kind of an overlapping jurisdiction. The town, at least the direction we've gotten from the board so far, is the town will be adopting all of the code. I'm assuming Lions Fire will be adopting kind of some or all of the code. And then we have kind of ongoing discussions that are pretty early on. Does, the building department want to regulate the structure, and the fire could help us with some of the site management. So all of that is still TBD. But I think either way, we're gonna have to work in partnership, both from like an understanding of how it applies and messaging and things like that. I don't have to go through all of this, but I do have essentially, kind of the key points of the code, but it's kind of two components. First component is what we call structure hardening, home hardening, and this is, elements that are fixed to a home or a structure, not just a home, but a structure that is occupiable. So it applies to residential, commercial, industrial. Basically, if there's people in building, if it's occupiable space, these codes apply. Class 1 is kind of the easier treatments. And then class 2 is everything in class 1, as well as all of these other items. So we don't have any WUI standards, in Lions today. We do have fire rated walls and building separation requirements, in the existing fire code. But this is going to be new for Lions as well as many communities to be regulating to these. So happy to chat on any of this if you have questions. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, we can come back to it if you need.
Yeah, I had it myself. We're good.
Okay. The second kind of component of the code is what we call site management. So it's the space around and between our structures. So they divide this up into kind of 3 different zones. And this, fairly closely mirrors, kind of best practices you'll see elsewhere, publications from the Forest Service, essentially 0 to 5 feet, kind of the most important area. And that's, directly around the house. So you want non-combustible materials. Planting should not be near the structure, especially if they're combustible. Again, you want to keep the tree canopy away from existing homes. Structure ignition 2, this applies to lions. Again, this is from that 5 to 30 feet. So pretty much, our single family neighborhoods, this is going to be kind of the rest of their yards. So this, I think we'll just kind of have to assume that this Zone 1 and Zone 2 will apply to pretty much every property that the code applies to. We will have some larger properties that Zone 3 applies to. So happy to pause here if you have any questions. But this again, and we'll cover this again, but I just want to reiterate, this only applies to properties where new structures are built. This is not retroactive on existing property as written today, unless you hit a trigger, which we're going to talk about. So get there. So if you're not doing work on your home, you do not have to do this. However, that could come later. Any questions on this piece? Just want to be, I think, clear for PCDC. The town currently does not regulate landscaping on private property. We do not require landscape plans on a single family home design other than like a grading and drainage, making sure swales and things are right. Nor do we have a process for kind of ongoing inspections of existing homes. And so I think a lot of our peer communities, as well as Lions, are really trying to figure out how to message this, how are we going to operationalize this, where can the fire district help, what can town staff absorb. So this component of this over the years will have increasing impact on residents and towns.
We have an HOA though, which kind of,
Just overrule it.
yeah, so to overrule it, yeah, the HOA has, we went to our HOA meeting, the person from Wildlife Partners.
Wildfire Partners.
Yeah, they're not, they,
I don't think there's rule, I don't
yeah,
know, but like what you can and can't plant.
Yeah.
But now I know junipers are really bad.
Younger junipers, yeah.
Maybe it would be helpful for somebody who's clueless about that to know from the code, that my builder, when he submits.
We don't like.
Oh, yeah.
Mountain
Yeah.
magnolia either.
We'll have a list of
Like,
plans that we'll be comparing against, so we'll publish some resources. We'll have to develop a whole educational program for our builders as well as for homeowners. So the only way this works in kind of both the short term and the long term is through education.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this one, Trustee Williams, this slide or the previous slide too?
That's a lot of info.
The one thing that occurs to me that I've never heard any discussion of is where we stand against these standards on managing town-owned property. And especially if we're going to walk into a listening session at the library on Thursday, we probably should have an answer to that.
Say it again, town-owned property.
Yeah, whether town-owned properties satisfy town-owned.
Well, it's a question eventually is like, what does enforcement look like, right? You
Yeah.
kind of alluded to it, that maybe we're counting on the fire protection district to be our inspector.
I don't think we can count on that. I think we will have to figure out the most efficient way to partner and who probably has the best
Yeah,
resources and credibility. I think from my perspective, who's the most credible entity to approach a homeowner in a couple of years and say, hey, X, Y, and Z. And then who has the resources and time. But I think we're definitely both gonna have to partner on education.
Can I put a juniper image in your head? So imagine Stone Mountain, or Stone Canyon. We've got 60 to 80 foot walls of flame coming over the ridge. And several of us are trying to take out junipers that turn out to be really hardy trees. So we're going after junipers with chainsaws, including some that are right up against the structures that we're trying to protect. Doing that in advance would have been much highly preferable to what we faced that day.
Oh, you were out there?
A bunch of people, or 1,000 people, it felt like, but 200 people actually. It was one of them.
I mean, and the Wildlife Partners Program sounds really nice. Like my neighbors have junipers right up against the fence on their side, so I haven't asked this yet, but can I use my $500 for there? We can do
I
it
don't
together.
know that Wildfire Partners allows that, but
That would be helpful,
That's
and
a-
it's like
yeah,
a
that's a-
community approach or neighborhood.
I might be able to help talk to the neighbor.
let's have this conversation in a couple
Yeah,
slides.
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
think this is, I think, gonna be the point of the conversation that probably generates the most community interest. All of this we have to do. In addition to that, there's some things that we can do. So in addition to, you know, kind of landscaping, shrubs, there is requirements, for site signage. Basically just making sure that, you know, during a fire, you have retroreflectivity on these signs, address markers, and that they're very visible so that emergency responders kind of know where they are and how to navigate. Retaining walls, and then fences. And as we saw in Marshall Fire, you know, fences, we have old cedar fences that get really dry here, and they were certainly one of the reasons, not the only, but one of the reasons why we saw such structure to structure fire spread throughout the neighborhoods, from Marshall Fire. So again, 8 feet is, they've kind of expanded for fencing. 8 feet, I think, is a little more aggressive than what I've seen in kind of best practices previous. It used to be 5 feet, but they've increased it to 8. Which would apply to a lot of folks' side property lines. You have a ton of 5 foot setback, you're gonna be picking up your side fences, not just kind of the wings. Although they do allow vinyl, I think.
Yeah, they do, but the thing is,
Vinyls.
it will melt.
It melts faster than it, or can melt, I think, kind of faster than it can
Yeah.
spread, but any thoughts on these?
Does that mean 8 feet, within 8 feet of your own regulated structure or another regulated structure?
Well, it depends on when the structure becomes regulated. That's a good question for clarification.
So if I put up a building.
Yep.
And it's within 8 feet of my neighbor's fence,
Mhm.
it may trigger a requirement for my neighbor.
No, I don't believe that's the intent of the code
Okay.
But if you replace an existing fence,
on your
so that's
property.
where I said last time we met, my neighbor had the wildlife people, Kipper wildfire people come out and write a grandiose report and then tried to get us all to follow it, and we were like,
One of the,
what could have happened?
Yeah, it is
pain
expensive.
points with like Boulder, for instance, who's rolling this out.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, realistically, like, we won't see like a neighborhood wide change in 50 years, maybe 100 years, depending on, I mean, there's just not a lot of turnover, and the trigger points that we'll get to in a bit is like, when you do this thing to your house, you are then on the hook for
Yeah,
updating all the things that you're reading about. But like, it's 500 square feet of an addition to your house. And that's not even like, it's an outward addition, so like some houses can't even get it onto a room. Anyway, it's interesting, it'll,
Mhm.
like, so these aren't things that are gonna happen quickly and no one has to do anything.
Right,
Your house could be unchanged for 75 years and your house would never be in compliance with this code.
Yeah.
Unless the town mandated some changes.
Which seems to be the pivot point in this discussion,
Mhm.
whether the town will mandate retrofits.
So yeah, again, if you have an existing home and you do any of these things, then certain components of the new code will apply. So again, if you increase the footprint of the structure, you replace more than 25% of your roof. So that, I think, over time, we'll definitely see the roof. Exterior walls, again, those kind of turn slower, you know, replacement of siding and things.
So this is one where I have a problem with the wording, or at least the terminology, and that should be 500 square feet, not 500 feet.
Yeah,
And
500.
that's okay, and I read through the code itself.
Yep.
But like, the footprint needs to be defined, and I don't think it was defined, I don't think we defined it in our code. So like, for instance, if you have an existing ground floor house and you add a second floor,
Mhm.
and you cantilever it on every side, or
That's not
structure,
footprint.
that's not footprint, unless
Yeah.
we define overhanging and living space as footprint. So I could basically add like a $2 million addition to my house and never trigger this code.
Which even if you cantilever, it'd be a lot of cantilever to get 500 square feet.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
But like I think it should be some, like, for FEMA, like for a flood zone or a
Yeah.
floodway, we say if it's and that's problematic too, but if we basically increase the value of the home by 50%, then you trigger raising the house 2 feet above the base flood elevation. So I feel like something like that is probably more realistic, especially since half our town's in the floodplain anyway. It seems like that would be something I think would be worth considering, is if we mirror the floodplain rules of when you trigger an improvement.
You know, that's an interesting thought, is lessening or kind of making the trigger closer to the current condition than what this code would allow if we're worried about, you know, change over time. That's a good conversation point, I think, for the board.
Well, and as far as I've heard it,
Yeah.
described to me, we bought a house that somebody renovated and didn't bother to have it permitted, so they should have raised it and they didn't, they sold it, and we bought it third person down the line. So we had to rectify it, but from what I can tell, it's cumulative over time, right? So if you add half the value of your home over time, at some point you will hit a trigger point.
Yeah, you
It's not
can't,
project based. It's not like I replaced my roof, I'm good now. I replaced, you know, I added 49% of the value of my home on this addition, I wait a year and then I do it again over here. It's not like that. It's cumulative over years. And then
Who's tracking her?
that's what's a problem. So like they even have like 7 or 8 different ways, maybe it's less, maybe it's 5 or 6 different ways that they say you can calculate that value. And Lyons has elected the one that says market value, which I think is really problematic. Right? So I could sell my house to you for $6 million and all of a sudden the market value is $6 million instead of whatever it actually is.
Yeah,
And then I could add 3 million and never have to raise it. There's stupid things you could do.
yeah, sure.
And I know people do like their own spreadsheet to try to show like the material costs and time and materials and calculate how much it is, but it's really up to you to just move the number. So it's all very problematic, but it might be a chance to look at our FEMA trigger too and see if we.
it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, without going down a rabbit hole,
Yeah,
I don't think 500 square feet makes sense. It's a huge addition. It's a 2-car garage for most people.
Yeah, that's a.
But this is coming from the state.
This is the state code, right? So
ADU basically though, is
an
that?
ADU would, a new ADU is subject to the code if it's
Yeah,
detached.
I mean, if it's about the size of
That's
the.
called a habitable space, which is living space.
Mhm.
So you could add a 2-car garage to your house and it would trigger this. You could add a
Yeah.
6-car garage.
Depending on how close it is to an existing structure.
If you add it to your own home,
Well, yeah, got
You
it,
will
sorry,
you
D,
could add a 6-car garage in line, you've never triggered this.
not the 500 square feet.
Which I think is stupid too. So there's a couple things I just think are problematic about how they're measuring the trigger. I always think it's problematic. The exterior walls one. This one I've seen play out in Boulder with the historic preservation, which is a
Yeah.
different issue, but it's like, you'll see these completely gutted demoed houses that have like one wall remaining, and they do that to like get around having, and I don't think someone would do that around the recode, because like your retrofit measures aren't that insane, but one of the questions I have is like, if you hit this trigger, are you now responsible for felling mature trees so that the crowns are 10 feet apart from each other?
That,
Cause that's crazy.
so that is, yeah, the immediate zone applies.
Yeah.
And I
saw
think,
that. I was wondering,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think we,
Planting a tree, like
I know,
some trees mature in 80 years. and the
Arbor
crowns
Day,
get
man.
huge.
I know.
So if I'm gonna plant, I don't know, what's a big tree? I got probably not allowed to.
red
plant
maple,
cottonwood or an elm,
wood
but-
maple,
maple.
ash.
Sure, a big maple. Let's say I plant one of those,
There's
like
lots of
I
red
plant
maples
2 in my
here.
yard, I have to put them apart from each other at 10 feet space from the maturity level, right?
Yeah, and they're
If
40
you're,
foot
if you're
crowns.
regulated by the code.
Most of our properties in town don't have enough frontage for that,
We
so like,
don't,
you would
yeah.
never be able to plant more than 1 tree in your front yard with this code.
Mhm.
It's just kind of silly, but I get the intent of it, so I think the trigger is what matters. If we're doing retrospective measures, it's like, do we not have mature trees be part of that? I don't, but
Yeah.
we just need to like look at it.
We
I,
just planted a whole bunch of trees, including juniper at the cemetery. And it
There's
wasn't
something.
important enough not for us, but for our grandchildren.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I want this code to work. I just.
Yeah.
PCDC did a task force where
oh,
we did our own kind of movie code investigation job.
Okay.
And led it. And it was great, except for it was just like an incredible amount of things you should do to
Yep.
make your thing fireproof. And so we kind of gave up because it got a little ridiculous. And now the state's got one, so it's great. We should probably adopt what the state's doing, but I think our triggers matter.
I think that's a good point. I don't disagree with you on that. I've also been like, every Monday I kind of come in and check who's adopting the code yet. Like, nobody's adopting the code yet. Like, I kind of want to see how either both the ordinances are structured and then how folks are kind of modifying or operationalizing some of this. And that is still, I haven't seen any pop up yet in Colorado. Lots of communities are having exactly kind of this conversation, just trying to get their arms around it. But I think when folks start adopting it, we'll be able to hopefully either consider some additional strategies or kind of what we wanna do, but
Well,
so
this one, like 35 acre thing, like,
that doesn't apply in Lyons, it's in the code. I don't know that we have any that would apply to.
okay, okay,
So I just put it in there, but I don't, that's why it's not highlighted. I don't.
When you're
Oh, I
talking
see.
about, like,
Yeah.
the town owned property, so. How many people have been to Fort Collins? Have you seen those big old streets where there's a huge median between with these giant old trees?
Yep.
I mean, is Fort Collins gonna go black?
I would assume those neighborhoods are not on the regulated map, but also town-owned property would apply if there's a structure on it that becomes regulatory, but it's a political challenge, certainly. Yeah,
Political challenge.
so there's a lot of circumstances for existing homeowners and property owners, you know, that don't trigger the code. You know, again, interior work doesn't trigger it, less than 500 square feet.
why doesn't interior work trigger it?
Because I'm guessing, right, like, just again, kind of a.
They don't
nexus.
cause, they're gonna
around.
cause,
Well, like my house was completely got renovated on the inside, that should, in my opinion, that should trigger. Like, if I have the money to like, you know, put in an $80,000 kitchen and like new wood floor, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you do like a full gut remodel of a structure, you should probably trigger this code, right?
trigger the outside so that.
But that's where you get into the problem, so that's another one where I'm like, I don't, but it's not our code, so maybe it doesn't matter.
We could add that though, because again, that would be making the code, you know, kind of stronger. We have that discretion.
Yeah,
We
maybe
could-
again, it's the floodplain, maybe it's like, if we either do this as it's written, or maybe we mirror the floodplain triggers for FEMA in a way to sort of make our code easier to understand. It's like, the triggers are the same for whatever mechanism, be it woody or flood. Maybe, I don't know, anyway.
I think that's definitely something to consider. Any thoughts on kind of, I guess, well, I think we're gonna get in there here soon. Again, yeah, so alternatives, I wanted to share, I didn't put it all in the slide, but I figured we might just kind of go through these, so the town board or the task force, which consisted of trustee Browning, trustee Lowell, Aaron Kaplan, and Cassidy Davenport, as well as someone from Lions Fire, I believe.
Steve Pishke.
Steve Hishke, thank you. Kind of came up with a couple different approaches. Again, so kind of vegetation management within the 5-foot zone. These are just some suggestions, which we're going to talk about at the town hall and probably do. And again, I think their thoughts were kind of, you know, you could do some easier, less expensive work.
A tree that's only at 6 feet tall, you just cut it down.
I think this would need some massaging for sure. I think this is, I think just taken from some conversations with different folks, but I guess there's, you know, a couple different headings on it. Just again, easier, less expensive, harder, more expensive.
Yeah.
And then same thing on the home hardening. You know, staff, I think, just to be clear, I think staff's initial thoughts, at least given the resources and the lack of, I think, clarity in some of the nuance of this code for administration of the existing code as written. I think we would not mind if we adopt the code or consider kind of the applicability of the existing code in Lions for maybe a year while we tee up a lot of education and potentially more incentives while we, you know, maybe try and incentivize some of this work rather than require work in the first year while we're also learning how to, you know, administer landscape plans and things like that for certain types of developments, but we'll take more direction.
It does seem like the hardening of a structure is much more understood than the landscape requirements.
Mhm.
Landscape requirements feel like they're sort of written for like a cul-de-sac community or something. Whereas I don't think the landscape for like sort of pseudo rural properties like we had, like we annexed Apple Valley, which we
Mhm.
haven't, maybe we would never will, but if we were, like, that'd be a weird thing to do out there, right? Versus say, Lions Valley Estates.
It would be kind of a sea change for our property owners and how they're used to seeing their landscapes and maintaining their landscapes.
How we like seeing too in some
But
ways.
I will say the people like the people who live up in like Pinewood Spring, like one of the people residents of there was once telling me that when he was trying to fireproof his property, you know, I mean, they do have in Boulder County, they do have, I mean,
I'm not super familiar with Boulder County's codes.
yeah, but
Partner.
Wildfire.
yeah, that's how it started. Wildfire started, I think, started, you know, the west side of town, then with the marsh that, and offer the services for the entire
They do
county.
offset zones, kind of like this isn't.
Yeah, I mean, he
And mine
was
are
definitely,
too.
like, he didn't wanna, he had a nice tree, he wanted, that was right near his duck, and he really didn't wanna tear down that tree, and that's when the wildfire department said, well, we can treat that tree as part of your house. But he was looking at how to, you know, create the defensible space around his house to lower and then I don't know if it was the same stuff, but where I'm going is they already have a, you know, system that they,
Wildfire partners.
yeah, and so, I mean, if that's.
Which town so just a little bit of background on that town, you know, Wildfire Partners, for those of you that don't know, is a program managed by Boulder County. It's been around for a number of years, but with the tax that was passed in Boulder County in 2022, I believe, or 23. They have much more revenue and I think have been more proactive with some grants and things. Lions Town Board offered, I believe, they added $5,000 to their budget to offer kind of if you get your $500 from Wildfire Partners, the town would give you up to another $500 for qualifying work. I believe we had 6 of those apply and another couple that are in review. So we did not have huge uptake, although every little bit helps. I guess the
It
first.
seems likely that we will adopt that same $500 budget line item for next year.
Yeah. I guess my first question, or the board's first question, might be, does PCDC think there should be just generally requirements that aren't triggered by work on everybody within the town related to wildfire?
Retrofit. Should enforce retrofit requirements across the board.
Yeah.
No, I think it would
That's a
cripple.
question the board is considering.
My problem with that is the same thing with like property values going up, though we can't really control that, is like there are people on fixed incomes who can't afford it.
Cannot do that
And-
without, okay.
I would agree with the feeling that my insurance is going up, so I'm paying for coverage for all that shit anyway, so I'm not gonna mitigate and pay my, and somebody could say that.
I mean, if there was like a targeted grant program or something, you know,
Mhm.
or a matching thing, or maybe you could like some kind of incentive, like, you know, like the affordable housing incentive in Boulder, where you can make affordable housing units, or you can buy into the coffers, which goes to support the development of affordable housing, right? Something along those lines. I'm trying to think like how that would even work for us to be wildfire. I don't know. Like,
Do you feel like?
Problem with cash in lieu is that we share one another's exposure.
right.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
that's why it doesn't make sense
Sure.
on this, because it's like,
Well, in another conversation, the board, I think particularly trustee Williams asked the question is, okay, maybe if it doesn't apply to the whole town, do we try and draw a buffer around the town where maybe it applies, you know, to, I don't know, I haven't thought about how you could figure that out, you know, or what the right math or what the right line is, but
well, is there a thinking, like advanced thinking on what the rollout of this would be? Like, is it over 5 years? Is it over 10 years? Is it 6 months? Like,
well, I guess that's a question too. I agree. I think that's all the things that the trustees would like to hear
you
from
went
the
to
community.
vote and you said in 10 years' time, everyone must comply with these seemingly 10 easy sounding things to do. I don't think that's a problem, but
But to require all the town to get compliance within a year.
Or
that
even
would-
all the county, or even all of Colorado, how are they gonna do it?
Well, I mean, yes.
we can, well, I guess it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Could we have a mill levy like for houses that don't, like you comply, this is never gonna happen anyway.
What are your thoughts on this or how?
Well, the one thing I'd share is that the board doesn't have a view on this yet,
Yeah,
but to the extent that we've talked about it, I'd say there are 5 things that seem to be getting a little bit of traction. And the very first one is have some listening sessions to find out what the commission thinks, what other commissions think, what citizenry thinks. That's the first one. And any of the other 4 are subject to feedback that we get on Thursday and beyond. The second is whatever gets adopted is likely to be either no retrofit or minimal retrofit. So a very small number of very clear, very impactful things that are not extraordinarily expensive. So listen, make it minimal, make it clear, which also helps with enforcement. It can't be the kind of thing where we have to have people walking around every property in town trying to figure out what qualifies and what doesn't. Right. And you asked, Commissioner, whether we might have some long runway to this. And that's another piece, is just giving people some time to catch up. So if that's 1 year or 2 years, it's probably not 5 years. People talked about whether 1 or 2 felt right or not, and all that's subject to more of what we hear from everybody. And then the last one, we also talked about these grants. Is there a way, particularly for people who want to comply but have some financial difficulty complying, to help make that happen? So whether the town can contribute more than just $5,000 in matching grants, help make all of this happen.
Or a volunteer.
I was just saying, like,
for
Lions
community,
volunteers,
right? You know,
I can see Lions volunteers going up and having a day, but it's like, okay, we're happy to remove all the junipers from your property. Yeah, like some kind of thing to meet fire codes, yeah, or, yeah,
Improve
or
risk.
trim back your branches
Yeah.
and find, yeah, maybe cut down a tree and if you have to, I don't know, yeah.
I was gonna kind of change the subject, I don't mean to do that.
Any other thoughts on retroactivity, other than I'm hearing, I think, some kind of concern over retroactivity out of the gate?
I think people only being told what to do.
On their private property, I mean,
Yeah.
when it's already, just affordability for
Yeah.
everybody just living right now.
Last time we had this conversation with PCDC with the task force, I remember somebody being like, none of this matters if we're not putting our electrical lines below ground, because that's our biggest threat. And I have no idea if that's true, but it's just wiggled its way in my brain. And I think about that. It's like, are we just, sort of painting over the rust every time we fix one house's?
I think collectively, you're playing the long game, to your point. I think the more you can do over time to reduce all of the components of risk, our community is going to be much more resilient. But you're right, when you have those gaps, kind of in our resilient network or system, right, then we're still at risk. But I personally don't think we should, as a community, say, well, the perfect is the enemy of the good, right? I think we, over time need to start coming up with strategies to mitigate our risk to wildfire, because as we've seen, I think it's any more time.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd say is that the board is not thinking of wildfire risk as a separate topic from everything else that we do. When we look at undergrounding, we think about wildfire. When we think about park space, open space, ways to expand town, we think about fire. And fire has become one of the criteria that gets considered in almost every decision it takes.
So one of the more expensive things that I would hope that most of Lions wouldn't have to think about is the roofing materials. So having, I don't know if they did a crosswalk between codes or anything, but what existing building code, fire code says versus this. Is it possible we have people, I have a roof I'm replacing in Estes Park right now that has wood shake shingles under the asphalt. Brilliant, right? Expensive. High pitch roof, so we're doing that this week, but do we have other neighbors in town that is a huge expense? And we all had a lot of hail damage in the last, we replaced it twice in the last 23 years, so because of the hailstorms here.
We already have our building codes in Lyons because of our wind speeds, and you probably might be able to speak to this a little bit more, but we already, our wind speed's 140, right?
Yeah.
So the shingles that you are required to do if you properly get your permit, and we already require expensive shingles, so. There are some studies, Headwaters Economics, and I haven't seen the presentation in the report, but I want to get my hands on it to share it. So they did an analysis of the state code, and on a new structure, the cost impact is fairly negligible. I think given, maybe a typical structure maybe would add $6,000 to $10,000 at the time of new build. I think it's a different conversation when you start talking about retroactive requirements, right? So again, if you're, a lot of folks like hardy siding, for example, a lot of folks are getting hardy anyway. Hardy cement board would qualify under this. So I guess it a little bit depends on what you were gonna do in the first place. But retroactive requirements would be more expensive as we think about, I think than like a new build. But
One
to
of my
require
neighbors here in
to
town,
upgrade.
Welch, has a wood roof.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure it's fire treated, because I don't know, he's lived here like 35 years.
Yeah, no, I know what's
That's a big
happening.
house.
Yeah, I think I know what's happening. I
Bill's
walk,
house, right?
yeah, I walk by and I think about it too.
I think about it all the time. That's an ex-firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the things, and see, for us, we purposely, when we moved here, went and talked to our neighbors, there was no fence. This is what we're thinking about for a fence, don't wanna block your views, and then like, I'm not replacing that damn fence, But those are expensive things that someone, if you get the wrong code enforcer who's running around and just writing people up, then that's also gonna be a problem.
Well, to that point, I think that's where we need to make sure whatever code we adopt is really clear. What it is, when it's required, because I think and that's where I'm really anxious to see some of the ordinances that other communities are
Yeah.
crafting around this.
If you did like a requirement, retroactive, and then like codify the enforcement, like, so it's a annual $100 fine, and that goes into some kind of grant program that goes to something where it's like people kind of elect to just pay the fine and not be in compliance, even though they're supposed to be. But nothing grandfathered. Just trying to think, is there some way you could say you have to do this, but don't really? I just
Alternative compliance. I mean, alternative compliance is, in all sorts of codes, like the cash and loot type option, that would be, something interesting to consider. An alternative compliance could be
I think if we want our town,
payment
to
into a community-wide fund or something. I don't know. We'd have to check with Brandon, but
we want our town to be safe, we have to do retroactive measures.
yes.
It's like stupid to do it based on its triggers.
If we want to reduce our risk to the greatest degree possible, that should be at the table.
When people apply for permits of any type, do they have to have an estimated valuation of that permit? Is that part of the process?
Yeah, that's how we determine our building permit fees.
Okay, so
It's based on valuation. of
you
the-
might be looking at like a really complex triggering tier of different valuation. So if you have a $5,000 project that needs a permit, you do a couple of things, and if you have, a $5 million project that requires a permit, you do all the things, right? And there's sort of scales in between. I don't know why I'm trying to solve this. I guess you're just looking for feedback. on
No, this is great. I mean, this is really helpful because you all have ideas that we haven't thought of yet, right? And maybe one of these ideas that you
Well,
guys
yeah.
throw out
I'm
actually
gonna
could be
go
one
with-
that the board says, you know what, year one, maybe we do that.
I'm gonna redo your deck, you
Year
gotta
three.
get those requirements.
I'm gonna ask Larimer County and Estes Park what they're doing, cause I'm dealing with it right now.
No one's doing it well, I promise you that. You're just, every one of them, so many of my friends practicing boulder architects are grumbling about boulders because. Like there's basically houses where they touch the ground are pretty ugly, like it's really hard to do that well when unless it's perfectly flat. And you can do a really consistent little like 6-inch band concrete or at the bottom, right, which is sort of required anyway. But anytime it slopes, now you have like foundation walls that like step like this and look
Oh, yeah.
terrible. And bushes really help, they cover it up. So there's like aesthetic problems. That's not to say there's not other ways around it necessarily, but like, we're kind of all like, crap, it's hard enough to do this anyway, I know it's gonna even.
It's a different aesthetic. When I was working in Superior, we approved a new development in downtown that had a 5-foot clear zone that was basically kind of pressure fines.
It's huge. Your table's 5 feet, right?
Uh-huh. And part of it was, based on the geotech recommendation for no, water next to the soil, but the other one was, Superior following Marshall Fire was really implementing Louis Code standards on certain projects. And my first glance at the building, when it first went up with this weird 5-foot gray dead zone, was like, that was strange, but you know what? Personally, once I walk by it, a dozen or so times, I just don't see it anymore. So I think it's just gonna have to be an aesthetic shift over time that we get used to.
It's sad, and like you drive around the country and you see certain like
Yes.
way things are just like, oh, you can tell we're living here because it must be because of. Their environment, or you notice that wherever you like travel around the country. I know, I guess being the planner in me, I kind of knows those things. I'm like, oh, you can tell more wet environment, and this is the way they implement, there's certain things you noticed about,
Since we got this code, I've been walking, every time I walk around, like,
Yeah.
my daughter to preschool, walk here tonight, whatever, like, there's a few of my neighbors that have gravel around their houses, but none of them are 5 feet.
No, 5 feet's wide.
5 feet.
The city of Louisville, they also adopted a home hardening code, about 3 years after Marshall Fire, but again, it's similar to kind of the triggers that this code has. You replace your fence, you're doing non-combustible in the first 5 feet, you replace your siding, you're doing non-combustible. I think one of the things that that community has been chatting about that would really help that be better is a list of not recommended partners or, you know, providers, but I think that's been a challenge for some of the contractors is, I don't know how to install this, I don't know where to source it.
Right.
So there's.
Well, we were doing that with their fencing in Lawrence Valley Park. People want to replace it with the metal, but there's literally, like, there's no one
Yeah.
that can do it.
And I think that should get better over the next few years as so many communities start adopting this code.
I helped a client build a house on Apple Valley, right?
Mhm.
And the county requires WUI code. Crap, I wish I remember the exact language. Basically, you had to go to California's listing
Yeah.
of WUI approved materials.
Yep.
And it's limited to only the companies who can afford to do that bullshit. So like James Hardy, every possible thing they make is on there, but nothing regional or local is possible, right? You have to go to these big companies that sell these materials that bother to get their stuff out there. So it really has like a limited palette. And this is not necessarily a problem, but like, I don't know, it's just disappointing, right? Like you're not allowed to like choose a material based on its kind of inherent fire proofness or ratedness.
If it's not on the California
Yeah.
list.
Like there are some manufacturers, like I have a buddy of mine who built his own house, architect up in Boulder, and he got wood siding and shipped it to Montana and had it pressure treated and it came back. And it was cheaper than buying like some off the shelf thing. But like he had the ability to figure out how to do that. Most people don't. So they're just gonna go and all buy the same 5 materials at Home Depot.
And I think a lot of smaller communities that either don't have the capacity to kind of develop their own list or their understanding of, you know, kind of how those material ratings, you know, work or are just, you know, there's a chance some folks might just point to those.
Also the roof sheathing and some of the roofing layers, there's no inspection. Like there's
We
no
don't
point
require
of
mid-roof
inspection. You
here
can
in
say,
St.
oh,
Lions right now.
what's that?
We currently don't require a mid-roof.
No one does.
Some communities do.
Oh, they do now? County doesn't. So like, they're like, yeah, it has to be this material, like it is, but then they never.
There's Yeah, there's a few of our communities in East Boulder County that
Okay.
require mid-roofs, but I think without a mid-roof, you're right, like. Who knows
So,
what they're-
When I was finishing my career in Boulder, we were changing things and there was a different group in Boulder that said every tree we had to take out, cause I put in a new gas pad and everything, we had to plant another tree in its place. And they didn't let us do a lot of rock and cement because of
Yeah,
heat.
Yeah.
And then they wanted us to use that gorilla grass stuff, which isn't that combustible. I mean, Boulder found it really.
A lot of municipalities, you can't even do grass anymore, you know, it's like all
Yeah, they want
these
us-
things.
Yeah. Cause the
Are,
grass takes so much water. Yeah,
yeah,
there's all these living parts.
Yes, our time on this planet has done its.
a lot different.
I think
Well-
some of, yeah, I think, again, it just depends on the degree we want to mitigate our risk. And
So-
the values of,
Maintenance too, like right now, I'm gonna stop complaining, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Super negative.
I'm curious,
Keeping gravel is hard, like weeds grow in it, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then they use Roundup on it.
Well, I was gonna say, like, glyphosate gonna become like, you know, most people.
it's okay, guys, AI is gonna kill us all in the next 10 years. So I'm curious,
Go ahead.
is there actually any value to, you said earlier something about an area like the outer, the folk, I mean, listen, that a lot of the people who live on the edge of town have the resources to do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
In a way
some-
that those of us who live in the heart of town don't. Is that actually of value in mitigating, or are we just?
I
Is it
think we
win?
know the degree to which a community the size of Lyons, you could realistically figure out how to draw a line. I think in our larger communities, because
Yeah.
this map is kind of strange.
Our whole town is like the width of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Regular city, yeah, I know.
That's easy for us.
It's not so much that you would have no requirements in one place and lots of requirements in another. It's that you might have different appropriate requirements for somebody who sits against open space
Yeah, I mean,
from somebody who sits in Old Town.
folks
Right.
up on the hill there, that's, you know, by the time it gets to Old Town.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places, a lot of houses in between here and there that might have.
And I think there's also ways, I think, one of the things I think the town could do is, you know what, if you get triggered into doing one of these, if you are in a certain part of town, then maybe we waive your building permit fee or something, because that's a community benefit for the rest of town, right? And so then maybe the rest of town, you know, kind of helps support the impact of the, you know, maybe the people around the edge that are bearing the cost. And so, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I don't know how the map would draw.
So you're gonna get some trustee member eventually, who's like, oh, the building code or the energy code, same thing, right? Now we're gonna waive.
I mean,
Energy
it's-
code's gonna be
yeah.
Benefit, right?
Yeah.
And it's not my burden. I don't know.
And, you know, I don't know, you'd have to look at the, you could look at some of the other, if you play around with this map, it's kind of interesting, because they have a lot of the other,
If you go east.
yeah, like,
Politically, it seems like if you just say we're adopting the state's code,
mhm.
it's not our fault, the state did it.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, sorry, you know, like this is the state's, this is what we're doing.
But as you said, it has very little effect for some number of decades.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then just keep incentivizing through the wildfire partners.
Well, our triggers, we can adopt the
Yeah,
code
yeah.
and
We can
play
lower
with
the
our
triggers.
triggers.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's the
That's
most
the
political.
discussion.
That might be a good compromise between retroactive, or at least something that gets beyond the code but doesn't go retroactive yet.
Some of the energy code stuff, like in the county, Build Smart, and some of the iterations of boulders have been like, you have a menu, you know, like there's tracks or a menu, or it's like, I have to do 5 of these 20 things. I don't know if that's good for fire code. I don't understand it well enough.
Three out of 5 is better than 0 out of 5.
Well, that's,
But you may only get one
That's
trigger
my
per
point.
property, right? You may not get another trigger. But it's like, you don't wanna like.
But I mean, for Build Smart, some of it is about the trigger, but then some of it is also about the actual requirements.
Yeah.
So if you have to do a certain number of these 5 things.
Right.
2 or 3 of these 5
My
things.
dishwasher's an Energy Star, I don't have to do whatever this thing is over here.
If you wanna take out all your junipers, we're gonna leave your giant tree alone, right?
so
There's got-
that was where, when I read the report from my neighbor, that's where I came up with. They need more of a weighted system that's based on science for some of these asks that they're doing. Because in the process safety world, we actually have math around the failure rate of this part versus this part or whatever, but. The juniper will buy you a lot more bang for your buck than replacing this, you know, wooden post that you've got over here. And some of these folks are scared, they're scaredy cats, and they're gonna just annoy all the neighbors to say, you're putting me at risk. And we're like, well, no, not really, because I'm a scientist and I do math, and that's not true.
I also personally am
There
would
curious.
be no math or science.
I don't know the degree to which the new state legislation around insurance transparency will impact homeowner behavior, but I think, right, the new state law goes into effect that if
Yeah.
they're dinging you for wildfire risk, they need to disclose how they've evaluated your property. And I think that actually coupled with some of these,
Yes.
so I think I'm just curious personally to see how that new legislation impacts behavior. If at all,
Yeah, what the pushback will be.
against the
To
insurance
Gail's
companies.
point earlier,
Yeah,
though,
we paid a lot.
kind of what we just talked about, maybe like within 5 years. 80% of the town has done the easy things on us. I'm just throwing stuff up, you know, so that it's kind of phased approach.
Mhm.
I mean, how many permits do we get a month, like of any kind?
Our annual volume is about 100 permits a year, but the probably
Okay.
good chunk of that is a water heater and a roof
Yeah, but
and a few window replacements.
maybe a new air conditioning unit triggers like, you have to do one of these 20 things.
I mean, I think that's a strategy the board could talk about, you know, where is, again,
They're gonna be
different.
pissed, they're gonna come to the
Different
truck
triggers.
and be like, what the hell? Yeah.
Easy for you to say.
But there could be a minimum amount, like just like your insurance, there's a copay, right? Or not copay, what do they call it?
Deductible.
Deductible, thank you.
You have a wildfire deductible.
Kinda, like maybe there's like you hit $5,000 and all of a sudden now you've hit the smallest tier of moving measures, right? But anything less than $5,000. There's another thing too,
For every 5,000 you spend, to spend 1,000 on mitigation.
maybe that's
Something
it,
like that.
yeah, maybe that's it. There's also emergency, or not emergency, detrimental rebuild or emergency, like basically if you
Like a
have
disaster or
a
something.
disaster, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, do you hold people to their buoy triggers if they had a disaster and they're rebuilding their roof because they're lit on fire, right? That's
Sorry,
another
that's a personally challenging conversation for me, but, I think if you have these codes in place ahead of time, you can have the conversation whether you want them back. But I think, we'll have the codes in place ahead of time, but again, like if we have another flood come through, we have another wildfire come through, just that becomes an emotional conversation for the community,
course.
and you'll have to navigate it at the time.
Yeah,
That would be my-
Kid kicks over the hot water heater, or not hot water, the
Yeah.
little, heater in the garage, and then it like starts a small fire, and they had to replace like some 2x4s, and it's $5,000 worth of work. Do they have to then like cut down some juniper branches or bushes? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how you,
And does
Actually,
this-
my neighbors on Park Street, they had a flood in their house, like from a malfunctioning appliance, right? And there was a lot of work. They had to move out of their house and like do some stuff. They probably had a permit for it.
that's a tricky position for staff to be put in, I think, so I
Yeah.
want to be really clear, how if we're not deciding, the code applies because you had an accident, or the code applies.
You're just
because-
having a
yeah.
really bad month, aren't you?
Yeah, so I think we'd want to be really clear in terms of like our job. I think it would apply
Maybe they could apply for a hardship through the,
if there's, a grant or something, or a relief waiver they could request of somebody, but that's a
I-
tricky.
I'm like worried now because I have friends at the state and call. So Colorado code's gonna say shalls, right? Shalls and wills on this. Does that mean we all lose our insurance because we didn't do all of it? I mean, did they talk with the insurance industry when they were designing? All laws are reactive.
I think there
They're
was
all-
a lot of concern at the state level by publishing a map, are you broadcasting to the insurance companies? But I think these maps already exist. Insurance companies
No, I'm
already
not worried
are.
about the map. I'm worried about the requirements to do all these things at your house.
Well, again, this is new, it applies to new property. And I think that's where I think.
Okay, so that will be a little bit helpful.
I guess unless the town does some retroactive requirements, I can't speak to
Well,
how
I
the
saw
insurance
the
industry
out was,
evaluate.
oh, it's a historical property. I just see us all applying for historical property ship, right? I don't know.
Any other thoughts?
You might wanna buy more insurance if you do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all should have bought more insurance after COVID. Price of materials went up, and then again, after the fires.
I don't know where we'll end up with all this. I do think the listing's important.
Mhm.
And not just to 20 of us who think about this all the time, but to 2,000 of us who could be affected by it. I want to make sure that people understand in this room and everywhere that this is not about punishing people. These may be required improvements to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what we'll end up with, if anything, but the intent is not to, beat on somebody whose kid knocked over a space heater. The intent is to make sure that those people and that kid are protected for the future as best we can afford. Whatever that might be. I don't know what it is.
Code is like,
Sure,
Mhm.
It really is.
there are these routine discussions every time there's a big fire in a town.
Yeah.
About whether the people in that town should be relieved of the requirements that would normally be attached to the code for a fire and for other things. And it's a slippery slope to say, well, let's just waive the code for all of those people or for all of that neighborhood or for all of these situations. I don't know that we would do that.
I think the math on the impact of cost on a new structure is fairly negligible. I was talking to a builder that is building in Loveland. I was chatting with him last year at the Colorado Code Conference, and Loveland, as you know, adopted a WUI code, right? So they have kind of a line, and they were building, I don't remember which builder he was, but he said the same exact home on one side or the other of the line. If you're on the WUI side, it was 10,000 more, and the price point of the home was like $500,000 to $600,000. So that's not nothing. But it's not a significant increase in my
It could
opinion.
be incredibly expensive to apply all of this, but no one's ever talked about applying all of it. What would it cost for people to put screens on their porches, take out their junipers and create a 30-foot limb up defensible space? Almost nothing.
Mhm.
Would it make a difference? It wouldn't solve everything. It wouldn't underground our electrics, but it would make a difference.
So the Louis code like up in Breckenridge 20 years ago even, they made, I guess businesses, not homes, put sprinklers on the porches. And then they had a huge part of the Louis code, it was around smoking and barbecues.
Behavior.
Stuff like that. It
Yep,
was
behavior.
behavioral and it was a big change, I remember, for everyone who had to deal with it.
Yeah.
But they were nervous. And that was before these big ones where we've seen the fire behavior change drastically and our weather change drastically.
There's a lot of different strategies we should consider, and to be clear, you know, adopting this code is gonna minimally impact our overall community risk if we adopt it as is, but to that point, over the years, you know, the long term, it does improve our risk, but it shouldn't be done in isolation. To think the community is now safe from wildfire, yeah,
Right.
for sure, solve the problem.
I don't think anyone would have a problem with new structures meeting the code, right? It's
For sure.
really,
Yeah, that, I mean, I know mine's Spanish Park, but I think Stone Canyon, a lot of the. I mean, we have cement siding on all our houses that was already implemented when they were, cement siding, they told us our roofs were like steel. That the way they were designed, I mean, I know on the east side of town, like a lot of the. Our new construction has a lot of this.
That's, I think,
The
the
double pane the
Mhm.
windows or the,
energy code actually
Yeah.
triggers some of this to some degree with the energy codes we have. And I think that's why I think the Headwaters economic study kind of showed like that cost. Their study showed the cost would be less than what that Loveland builder shared for new construction. But again, I don't think people will believe you if you say that there's no cost impact. So I think we need to, I think we assume there would be a minimal cost impact on new. And then the retroactive, again, the roof, I don't believe the roof will be a significant increase in cost given our wind speeds that we have now.
ignition resistant vegetation. Yours gonna list it.
Yeah, CSU publishes a list, there's a couple other lists, I think it's just plants that carry kind of a higher moisture content or, not high resin content. Yeah, so not a high resin content, CSU is probably the one that folks point to the most.
Makes sense. Fireworks plants.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
CSU extension of about 50.
Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District actually developed, we partnered with them after Marshall Fire. They developed both Firewise and Waterwise landscape templates for you've probably seen these. For head nodding. Yeah, so there was a team of us that Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District developed for new construction. And so I think that's something that, they kind of have those out there. If somebody wants a suggested landscape design that looks pretty nice. If there's some templates.
Where's all that, yeah, cause I remember when the Cowwood fire was approaching, a friend of mine said, how we've, sprinkler system and all on. And just, are you watering your lawn to death to make sure the fire doesn't come? But the thing is if we're getting away from green lawns, are we exposing ourselves to more? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if fire wise and water wise can work together, yeah.
Yeah, and even the Waterwise landscapes, those had some areas of green grass for kids to play and dogs to run around, so. If you think about sprinklering the entire town, we do have to make sure we're good with our water capacity, and we have the capacity if all of a sudden everybody's sprinklers. Activate at the same time, I'm sure we still have water pressure.
Yeah,
So it's something that we can manage on our end, as we think about the education, but yeah, a lot of phones were saved and some of these fires just put folks up there with hoses, saving their, watering down their structures, so.
We had a couple of structures we were trying to protect that had sprinklers that could reach the porches, and it made an enormous difference.
Oh, really? Are there lawn sprinklers or
Yep.
oh, wow.
I mean, we would move sprinklers as close as we could to the homes, but if they were already pre-positioned on patios, it made a big difference.
Okay.
Just to plant another image in people's minds, it seems like we're talking about a lot of really serious retrofits. But just spontaneously looking through the list, thinking without having the math and without having nearly as much experience as someone would have to be smart about which things to pick. What if we just said 5 things, just to sort of wrap our minds around it? What if we said you had to have screens underneath your decks and patios? You had to have some kind of screen or other protection on vents. You had to limb up the trees within 30 feet of your house. You had to have good signage for your address.
That we've been trying to get for decades.
And you took out junipers. I mean, none of that is expensive, but if you did those 5 things, it feels, can't do the math, but it feels like that would make a difference. And some people would support that, some people wouldn't, some people love their juniper. But for those 5 things, those are pretty modest things. And if you gave people a year to do them and offered to help pay for them and weren't just ridiculously invasive about the way that you enforce that code, people might be okay with it.
Parts of town where people had to raise their homes after the flood, the under deck portion's a little tricky. Cause sometimes they got 3 or 4 feet of space.
I know, I think there's like a point at which a screening becomes, they can't use it anymore if it's a walkout, so then it's just, kind of when does
I
it?
agree with everything else.
Yeah.
That's the only one I was
Yeah.
like, a little bit of town.
Yeah,
I think my poor neighbor Joe's gonna have to get a storage unit. Just fine.
but flammable materials certainly on decks and under decks, and like the patio furniture can be problematic if it's not.
Threw a lot of patio furniture off decks.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, good conversation. I mean, it's an important issue. I do think if people can start connecting dots to the mitigation and possibilities of decreasing their insurance, that's gonna be the real incentive. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think so. I think we also, the volunteer thing is important. We have a lot of elderly.
Yeah.
Throughout Lyons. Fancy neighborhoods and not fancy neighborhoods, they're gonna need help. We have a problem with one neighbor who just cannot understand, she hasn't gotten the memo about the bears and the garbage. And I've told everyone, help her. And I've gone to help her, they're like, get her a bear-proof trash can, I have one I would give her, but guess what, she can't open it.
Oh, yeah,
Cause she's,
mobility challenges that make that tricky.
yeah, so people will need some help.
Yes. I think it has to be coupled with really strong education and getting, to your point, people to connect the dots.
State, they did it to us.
Yes.
Reactive as ever.
We can blame them. Okay, any other thoughts on this one?
No, good luck.
Thanks.
So what-
Thanks.
We're done.
I mean,
Yeah, what's happening?
Want to give Neil the details of the meeting on Thursday so he can come if he likes?
I
Yes,
think not,
Thursday.
I approve all of this, but I just cannot imagine Lions isn't gonna think that Victoria's out to get them in some capacity. Which seems to
It
be
doesn't
true.
matter what we do, Lions is gonna think Victoria's out to get them in some capacity, so that's.
I've had lots of conversations with communities that have chosen to regulate retroactive and some that haven't, and they've all said it's challenging. I think that's a universal response from staff who has regulated retroactive requirements on property.
Yeah.
To the degree, depends on how heavy-handed you want to be and what type of compliance you expect. Yeah.
Incentives.
Yes.
Incentives and education have to be paired, I think, if we want to be effective.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
That was great, thank you.
Yeah.
all right, stay
Very good.
tuned. We are having a town hall this Thursday at
Okay.
library. Check what time it is. That the board is very interested in hearing from all of the community, if anybody is out there listening, and for you all as well.
We'll be at the University of Colorado.
I will be in New Orleans.
Entertaining New Orleans, that sounds good. Be entertaining alumni who are gonna shamelessly ask money from.
Oh, there you go.
I'm an ex.
It's at 7 p.m.
Oh,
7 p.m. on Thursday night.
This is just my department. Department is
Any other thoughts about sharing this with the community?
It'd be great if you could like cherry pick. We should all think about our neighbors to send to that meeting on the 30th.
Well, have you ever been to the wildfire partner, but they have like you go there and they're like, the first thing they have on their junkyard junipers. and that goes back to what, being on
But
the
I
front
think
line.
getting varied input, like my
Yeah.
neighbor Bill, I'll try to get him there.
That would be great.
Because his house needs me. Drag your fire. And then someone up at Lions,
Well,
I probably know some people up there. Maybe we can get them to come.
Tell your friends and neighbors.
can you get
Joe would
can you
come.
get any on-duty firefighters to come to the meeting and?
They're aware of the meeting.
I know, but like that matters, right? Like if Victoria tells them or Board of Trustees tells them, but if like. their firefighters tells them-
Helicopter Paul, make him come.
Alright.
We'll be sure to share that message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even Maureen should be a good person to answer questions too.
Okay, so our next meeting is the 10th.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we'll have something or not on the 10th.
Okay.
Since we've continued that into the 24th. So I would say stay tuned.
Stay tuned, watch your email.
The approved design we did for the
Yeah,
swimming pool, seems like it's going under.
yes,
fire,
so yeah, from staff updates, the board approved.
Like what?
Oh,
right? It's always a building there. It
it's a
is.
swimming pool.
That's a
Swimming
pretty.
Gravel pit.
Yeah.
I could stand a picture of it.
The board approved the plan last Monday. That just last
The
Monday,
building
yeah.
first, right? So you have a permit.
They are building shoring, so
Right.
we have issued, the portion of their foundation because they've excavated up to the property edge. So it's under their demo permit, but the shoring will become their foundation.
Cool. I got excited because that's all
I know.
foundation. I was like, wow.
I know, no, so it's approved as shoring, but we've checked the grades and it will essentially become their foundation, but it was approved at their own risk as shoring. We have not seen the building permit application yet, but we hear the only thing they're waiting for is their MEP finalization on that part of the design, and the rest is, I think, ready to be submitted. So we're very excited for that one. Any other board updates for the commission you can think of? Okay.
I mean, I mentioned budget a couple of times. We have spent a fair amount of time in the last week or so thinking about next year's budget. It'll go pretty fast once the next draft comes to the board. So if you or others have thoughts about what priorities ought to be, please pay attention to what's getting posted. It'll happen.
November 17th is when we anticipate adoption of the budget.
Are there
So
any
yes.
updates on the Gwen's greenhouse property, whatever we call that now, what is that? The future art gallery?
Oh, yeah, the
Zingles?
singles, yeah,
That application has continued to get continued, so the applicant has gone non-responsive. Communicated that to the board, so the item is now continued to January 20th.
Yeah.
It's challenging, and I think, due to the annexation agreement, some of the obligations that get triggered under the TIBO development, those are not yet known. So they're still in early stages, so I think they're just trying to figure out the impacts.
Any like pre-applicant type meetings from interested buyers in the Western Stars original property, the one that has a for sale sign?
We have been getting some inquiries, nothing to announce.
Okay.
So folks.
Yeah, start burning the green candles.
Anything to say about Village Center?
Village Center,
Yeah.
the new owner.
West Village Center.
Dairy bar.
Yeah, that one's under new ownership.
the dairy bar.
That whole building.
Oh, okay.
Center.
Yeah,
Oh.
we have not heard anything from that new property owner other than just some of his due diligence questions, so.
Yeah, cause there's was it the game store over there? They wanna make that. Yeah, so yeah, they run posted on my things of looking for a new space but stay in town because apparently can't work out something with the landlord, so that's be the new owner.
Okay,
It's moved a lot, lots of different operators in that corner space over the years.
Okay, so another public announcement, November 14th, there's a Priscilla event at the Wildflower with art and music, so be there, be square. And I missed Sean's beautiful cooking.
I know.
I said we
You
should do
ran
that
out in
once a
no
month.
time. It was only like 2 hours. If you didn't get there by 2, you got no barbecue.
Or was this, at
That
the-
was the Ned benefit at
Oh,
the Night Choir. It went really well, but. some
We
of
made
us
two
were
grand.
like,
We made almost $2,000 for the food pantry.
"Oh,
that's great.
Is there any movement on our regional housing authority with Gilpin County and Netherlands?
They are doing public engagement. There are open houses scheduled up in Gilpin County and one in Netherlands in the next week. The town board, I think, when we gave an update to the town board, I think kind of their consensus was I want to kind of monitor how this is going, but it probably does not make sense for Lions. So we're just kind of continuing to see how the
Yeah.
discussions go, but I don't think it'll be something that we pursue long term.
Makes sense. That seems like Andrew's pet projects at the time, but.
This looks it.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
That's like, that's named after Johnny Lee.
You were named after Jenny Lake?
Yes, I was. I always saw Eric and always the ring of theirs. I like Johnny.
That's Grand Teton?
Yeah.
That's such a pretty area.
Park Rangers.
That's great. All right,
Thanks, you guys.
Good night all.
Dolores was out again today, so we'll get all that stuff ready, hopefully as soon as she's back.
All right.
Thanks for all your
For all
comments.
your
That's a great idea. I'm just like, God,
We had some people that were
Sounds fun.
interested.
I, it sounds